Now let's go to the group.
Yeah.
The group was at the beginning called audience. Why audience?
Because we had open sessions in New York.
Mm-hmm.
People who didn't know anything about psychodrama. And they came as an audience. And it wasn't until Moreno stopped that audience position and said, let's do some sharing from now on. Now, this was a bunch of psychiatrists, and we had presented a patient of Moreno's who was getting better. And one psychiatrist begins to analyze her, and another. And of course, one's a Freudian, one's a Jungian, one's a Hahnemann, you name it, they represent all the schools. And this poor girl, Moreno looking at this poor girl is getting more and more confused. By the third time said, stop. This is not what this session is about. It's about, and he turns to the psychiatrist, you have a problem with your daughter. Now, no psychiatrist is going to tell him. So, that's when we moved from the audience to the group. And that's when it became really group psychotherapy, in the common sense.
Mm-hmm.
When Moreno talked about group psychotherapy, he thought about sociometry, reorganizing a group. But we didn't have the power to reorganize this whole group of people coming from the outside. We could guide them within the theater.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of how they related to the problem that had been presented. So the word audience is not a good word, and it slips up sometimes in the literature, but it's not really correct. You know, we were also learning. Don't forget, when Moreno presented patients in Beacon, there really was an audience. I mean, there were people who were not going to get involved. They wouldn't sit there and listen and look at these psychotic patients. That is the difference between being a group member and being an audience. Mm-hmm. And the group people in the group have to realize that they are part of the process. They belong here.
Actually, when these open sessions started, the idea was to have for each session an independent group, and or not, or was already there the idea of having a series of sessions? How was that done?
You could have a series of sessions in New York because there were people who walked off the street, and those people who heard about it. But in Beacon, there was a sequence of sessions about a patient, particular patient, as we followed the therapeutic process. But that was a closed group. Mm-hmm. With an open group, that's much harder to achieve. But you can have an ongoing learning group that is maintained the same. And then you can pursue this. For instance, the next session, how many people still reverberate with Renato's session?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the case we have in my office, where we have it's the same group.
Then you can sequence it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the group. Do you have any suggestion regarding the size of the group and the techniques
that is an eternal question. Some people thought 7 was the right amount. Moreno said, it is not the number, it is the relationships between the people. He said, you can have a married couple and it's hell. Mm-hmm. It's only 2 people, but they can't work together. So it's not the number of people, it's how these people relate to each other. Are they open to each other and willing to work with one another? Yeah. That's your criterion.
Yeah, yeah, but it's true, Zerka, that the more people you have, the more complex it becomes.
Absolutely. The world you're living in is complex. Look how it is. It's a mess. But the small groups, Moreno believed that small groups are where things begin to change. Don't forget that revolutions start with a small group. Started with 3 people in Russia. But they began to conquer the country. Not for the best. Look what happened in Cuba. It was a small group that conquered the country.
Yeah.
So it's the relationship between the people in that group that we're concerned about.
Mm-hmm.